Yeah, well, let's dig in. Hello, everybody. I'm David Cooks, and I tell you what, we know that paralysis can take on many forms. It can be physical like mine, or it can be psychological. Anything you put your mind to. And what we try to do is feature stories that go from difficult places to fulfilling purpose. What seems impossible can be done by you. Let me tell you a little bit about our guest. He is currently the executive director at Mentor Greater Milwaukee. It may knock you down, but don't let it stop you. Service has been a part of his life. You would never know that he's accomplished all the things that he has because he doesn't talk a lot about it. He's about doing it.
And I couldn't walk more than 10 feet, 5 feet. Going upstairs was almost impossible in some cases. I couldn't even open my mouth to talk at one point in time. What happens if you can't do what you love no more? But what I found was I had created a circle of people who knew me and understood me. And so without me having to say what was needed, they were able to pour into. Got so much to give, a lot of life to live. You must go from paralysis to purpose.
Get your pen and paper out.
Yeah.
I'm taking notes.
Paralysis to purpose.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. I'm your host, David Cooks, and I tell you what, I love doing this because every week I find something out different about the people I thought I knew. Our guest today, I'm sure he's going to tell me something. And I'm like, what? So, like I said, I get to speak with some of the most intriguing and inspiring people on the planet. And these are game changers, and today is no exception. Before I introduce my guest, let me do as I always do. Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you're a first timer, listen to another one. Do me a favor and share it, comment, leave a review. Let people know, because we're impacting lives literally around the world. And we have talked with people in all parts of the world. And we want to make sure the message about how you can get from paralysis, whatever that is for you, to your purpose is possible. Well, I know our guest today. He's from the 414. That's Milwaukee.
All day. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And our paths have crossed in so many different arenas. His sons were some unbelievable basketball players here in Milwaukee, and they went to a different school than our conference where I was the head coach, and we would have these games and these rivalries, and his sons would get juiced up to play us. I don't even know. We may talk some. I don't even know how many games we won or lost, but the games were so intense. And his sons, he's done a great job raising a couple of young black men here in Milwaukee. You don't hear a lot about positive things that are happening, and he's going to share a lot of that with you. He is currently the executive director at Mentor Greater Milwaukee. And I did some work with him when I was doing some mentorship through Milwaukee Public Schools when he was the director of the Black and Latino Achievement Initiative. And so I was grateful to try to help with that. He's also been at the Boys and Girls Club. I mean, service has been a part of his life as long as I've known him. And you would never know that he's accomplished all the things that he has because he doesn't talk a lot about it. He's about doing it. And so with that, I would like to welcome LaNelle Ramey to Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate that. I really do. It's exciting. Like you said, it was some good games back in the day. I had me trying to coach from the stands and you on the sideline. But no, it's a pleasure definitely to be here.
So we had some great time. So let's just, I want to go back. You are here from Milwaukee and you had a childhood here, and none of our paths are necessarily linear in how we get to our place. And you had some challenges along the way. Can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing, your family, and then after that, we'll get into who was it that most influenced you that helped you get on the right path?
Well, I'm Coach Cook, born and raised, heartbeat is here in Milwaukee, of course, right? I tell people all the time, proud MPS alum, went to the best high school in the land and country, Riverside University High School. But, my roots started, on 32nd and North Avenue here in Milwaukee. I'm super... I wouldn't be where I am today without my parents, of course. And, for me, I had two pops. I had my biological father, then I had my stepfather. My stepfather met my mother, I think I was 2 years old, 1 year old. And he's been instrumental, and they've been instrumental in my upbringing. But I tell people the story, there was a couple memories I remember from 32nd and North Avenue, right? We lived in a 2-bedroom. It was actually a duplex. And I remember vividly my mom's cousin, and she was like a sister to my mom. So her kids were like my brothers and sisters. Like we grew up like playing together, but they had a situation, so they had to move in with us. And she had 3 kids, so the 4 of them moved in with us. So you got 8 people in a 2-bedroom apartment, basically, on 32nd and North Avenue. You know, when you open up the refrigerator, sometimes all we had was cheese and bread, right? Like you think about those things then growing up. And this was early. So I remember these things vividly, 4 years old, 5 years old. Remember being there, but it was also fun. I mean, having my cousins there every night for a few months. But again, just thinking about how we came together, we banded together. And, you know, the other memory for me that sticks out the most, me and my sister used to walk to school. We went to 38th Street School in Milwaukee, and we used to walk to school. It was right, not too far from where we were at. And I remember one time coming home, and then if you can picture this, like you open the front door and you can see down the hallway, which you can see the back door in the hallway. So we get home, you know, running like playing, open the door, and the back door is kicked in. So it's laying in the hallway. I'm no older than 7, maybe, I think, and thinking like, what's going on? Like somebody broke in the house. I remember my sister saying that. Somebody broke in the house. And she was 9, no more than 9. And so I'm thinking to myself, they better not have stolen my G.I. Joe, right? That's in my mind. I'm thinking, as long as they don't take my G.I. Joe, right? But then I remember my dad showing up. It's almost like it was instantaneously. I don't remember. Remember, there weren't cell phones. There weren't beepers. I didn't know the number to his job at 7 years old, but somehow he showed up and he cleared the house. I remember him saying, let me clear this house. Make sure y'all safe. And I remember a year later, we moved out and my parents bought a home on 49th and Hampton. We moved out a year later from that time. He had to protect his family. That's one of the lessons I think I learned from my dad, is being a protector and taking care of your family and being there when they need you, right? Like, you know, even when they don't think you're gonna be there, you there. And I learned from that lesson. I learned that situation. I learned that lesson. So that's a little bit of my upbringing. I'm a father. Me and my wife together, I'm remarried. We have 8 kids. We got 4 grandbabies. So we got a busy house on a regular basis, even though most of our kids are 18 and over. Our oldest will be 31 in October, and the youngest just turned 18. But then 11-year-old granddaughter, a 7-year-old granddaughter, a 5-year-old grandson, and a 1-year-old grandson. So very busy, very busy.
Wow, you know, you must have got married when you were like 12. Something like that.
It felt like it the first time around. So, figuring it out though. I had to learn some hard lessons, but yes.
Wow. Hey, couple of things that you mentioned, because you really did paint a picture of poverty for us, for our listeners. And but the one thing you said was you had a great time because there was family. Mm-hmm. And could you talk a little bit about the importance of family and how you said you opened the refrigerator door and there was basically government cheese and milk. And how did you see past that to the possibilities of the future? And then I want you to talk about the mindset and when did you decide I'm not going to have any more government cheese?
Right. Well, the first thing with family is, the connect when you truly believe and have these experiences together, you also talk about coming out of it together. You start to, as family, understand that this is temporary. You make sure you're talking like it's temporary. You don't get caught up in things like generational curses as far as saying it. Regardless of what you've been through, what we saw as a family, it seemed like my mom and dad worked hard. They worked hard. And I remember seeing that, visually as a 5-year-old, 7-year-old, then I got to go to work. I got to go to both jobs. Mm. And so there was always these actions towards this is temporary. And I remember my mom and dad not thinking poor. Like, I hate to say it like that. And I think sometimes people think poor. Like I said, we opened up the refrigerator and there wasn't food in there. Me and my sister had to look at it. It's like, I remember that's where I learned about hog head cheese. You cut the hog head cheese, throw it on the cracker, that was a meal, right? Like, and so you learn though we see this in our future. We're going to talk about it. We're going to try to get there. Like, we're not going to get caught up in it's going to be a struggle tonight. Like I said, yes, 8 of us in this house tonight, and that's all right. We're going to eat. We're going to figure it out. But we figured it out together. And it was like how we linked together. So that mindset for me was always there. Even I was a father early. And my first son was born when I was 19. And though I had a great example of a parent, it still was a guessing game. So I'm trying to figure out how to be a father, be a man, be a protector, be a provider, trying to do all of these things at 19, still enrolled in college. I was at Marquette at the time. I had just transferred from Morehouse College to Marquette, and here trying to be a father. And so I had to learn these lessons of the struggle is not going to be forever, but you have to learn from the struggle. So I was able to pull from my experiences as a young person. But the mindset always was keep pushing, do what you got to do. Don't get caught up in the quote unquote saying that you this or that. No, you're going to talk prosperity, so to speak. So
you earlier, before we got on, you talked about your dad was your superhero. He was like your guy. And I want to talk about that a little bit, because in the media today and in public in general, the Black father is often vilified.
Yes,
he is talked about as being absent and not responsible, and all of the examples that are visually given to us are not representative of us as a people, as a whole. Talk about your dad and that superhero cape wearing guy that you came to know.
And I think about it's funny because my dad served in the Air Force and then eventually in the Army Reserve. And so, he had a mindset, right? That service mindset. But it was we call it the swag now that you saw outside of that just, I looked at sometimes, and again, he was a hard worker. He didn't go to college, but he pushed hard, I think, and I want to say paint a picture because that gives a false pretense, to build a picture. Like, that's the best one, because he built a foundation around work hard, follow your dreams, support your peoples, have each other back. Like, I will see this, but I think about the time when family would come to the house, the barbecues. I tell people all the time back in the day, basement parties were the real deal back in the day. So, my daddy brothers and cousins would come to the house and be all in the basement. They playing spades. They out there playing the old school music. And I'm sitting there watching my pop be in his cool mode, right? Doing all this. And I was like, I think it cool, right? Like, but he was still this stern military guy. And it wasn't until my mom passed away in 2019 was the first time I saw him cry. Like, he had never, so it was kind of one of these things where he was my hero, but he also never showed vulnerability because he almost felt he was protecting me. I never forget a story. I was 16. My dad's from South Side of Chicago. And I remember we used to go there every year. And I remember one time distinctly, I was about 16. And my dad has 9 brothers and sisters. So family, right? When I talk family, we family, right? So we get down there. I remember being in the kitchen with my auntie. My aunt was a phenomenal cook. And my auntie used to have these hands where she just put everything in the food, right? And they used to call my daddy Lump. And then we talking about something that happened to me at school. And I remember my auntie pausing and looking and saying, well, Lump, tell him how crazy you was when you was in school. And he'd be like, no, that boy old enough. So he would never want to talk about his journey as a teen because he didn't want it to impact me. He wanted me to see him now. And and funny story is I tell people all the time, in particular with mentoring, we have to be vulnerable enough to tell our entire story to people. Because people can't just see the outcome of the journey. They got to understand what you came through, what you went through to better appreciate their own journey, right? So if you only talk about the now, but my auntie used to be on him tough too. Like, I don't know, tell him about that time you got put out of school and daddy had, and stuff like that. So, right. But that's why he's my superhero, understanding all of that and the things he's doing.
Vulnerability, which I think is something that basically, it's difficult for people. It's difficult to let people see all of you. Let's talk about your high school situation and and the journey that was there, because I believe somewhere somebody said something to you. You already had your family that was supporting you, and you had great role models in your dad. But for many of us, it takes more than our immediate family to help us get to where we need to go.
Yes.
What was that turning point for you?
It probably didn't come for me until close to junior year, but my mentor came to my life as a freshman in high school. His name was Mr. Tom Wild. He was my homeroom teacher at Riverside. I tell people this all the time. You know, Tom. He was a young teacher at the time. Corny white guy, I call him. I'm like, he was corny. Like, he didn't dress slick. He didn't do nothing. He walked funny, but he cared. He cared enough to have conversations. He cared enough to see things and be like, LaNelle, do it this way. So his interaction with me and many students, and I'm not the only one that shared the story about Mr. Wild. He has done this he taught for nearly 30 years. And I promise you, every year there was 20 kids that had the same story. So he did this phenomenally, but it wasn't until I saw something in my junior year, like he helped build confidence. One of the things that we say in our trainings for mentors is that young people who have a mentor in their life are 130% more likely to hold a leadership position because of their mentor. Because mentors instill confidence that otherwise young people don't see. So that turning point was I had this mentor in my life. I had these super supportive parents. And here's the other thing, Coach, that was really important. I had a peer mentoring circle. So my circle of friends also were, even though we were completely different individuals, they didn't allow me to do nothing that wasn't LaNelle like. They didn't put me in a situation that wasn't LaNelle like, even if they was in a situation. But they were always reinforcing. So you add Mr. Wild, this peer circle, my parents. Now, junior year, I'm feeling myself. I kind of, walking around the school like, I'm kind of somebody, right? But then I remember going into my senior year, I knew I wanted to go to college, but I didn't know really either. My mom was actually a late college graduate. She finished Alberno in 1988, which was my junior year. And so here I go going into junior year. Mom just done college. And I'm thinking, well, I got time. Think about that mentalness of it. Like, my mom just finished college. She's, I think my mom had to be about close to 40 maybe. And I'm thinking like, oh, okay, I can go, But in the same breath, I'm like, okay, but I see other people getting ready. I'll never forget this. Mr. Wild came to me my senior year. It was about December 1989 approximately. And I'm sitting down at a desk. And remember back then to go to college, you had to fill out the application by hand.
Yes.
He sits down and he drops a Morehouse application in front of me and says, this is the college you're going to. And I looked like, and I knew about Morehouse, heard about it. And I'm like, okay. So I filled out the application. He helped me. We did the little essay together and mailed it back. And that was the only college application I did. It was the only college I got into. And it was because he sat down and he's like, literally that's how it happened. Just a bit in vision. You got this corny white teacher wearing glasses, thick, big sweater, walking funny, he's still young now. He's still in, he may be late 20s, early 30s, but I'm like, Mr. Wild, what? This is the college you're going to. And we did it. I got into Morehouse. And so to your point, like when we go through our journeys, like we need people like that see something that yet we're not yet seeing, right? And that's what he saw for me. And like I said, it's been a journey ever since. Like I said, I ended up transferring to Marquette. I found I was going to be a father, so I wanted to be close to home. And I wanted to be near my son and end up coming home and going to Marquette and finishing at Marquette, even though that took me a little time, but I did it. But yeah, so. Yeah,
well, I mean, you're all about finishing. So you were not going to finish.
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's interesting that your high school experience, you're an African-American kid, grew up in 49th and Hampton. And for those who don't know, back then, 49th and Hampton was, kind of a move up from 32nd and North.
Now, listen, that was like the George Jefferson. We went to big town. We thought, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because we lived off 24th and Hampton, which wasn't bad, but we were a little bit closer to the projects.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And so you have this move up. So there's a couple of things. One, Your dad had the wisdom to get you out of a situation that was traumatic and could continue to cause trauma.
Yes.
Let's talk about the power of choice, because I don't know sometimes if people understand that they do have the power to choose. With that comes sacrifices and other decisions you have to make, but you do have the choice. Can you talk about that? Like, because I think we don't hear a lot about that now. A lot of people don't think they have a choice. I'm born here, have to do this, have to stay here. What can you say about that?
And I think the tough part about that is it does become a mental strength you got to have. You have to really believe you have a choice. And part of the problem we see sometimes, and like I said it earlier, this generational curse that people think exists over their life. So if they see their grandparents who live on Second and Vine, living in this one house, and my mama had to live with her brother had to live with her, and then I see it, and some people think, therefore, they don't have a choice. And if they don't get the support in school or outside in the community to see other things, then you can get locked into this is the only thing I have scenario, right? Oh, I have to do it this way because I believe, like, again, one of the things that my parents taught me is that your now is not your forever, right? And understanding that my mother's from New York City. My mother was sent to New York because my grandmother at the time couldn't take care of her. Well, so she had to come stay with my great grandfather, her grandfather, who was a traveling musician. So then my mother ended up being in foster care. So her willpower was, this is not my forever. And therefore, I'm going to do everything in my power to turn the corner. Like I said, graduating college in 1988 for my mother was a huge feat. Huge. Because if you would have went back to when she was sent here to come and live with her grandfather, be put in foster care, she would have never thought college was an option for her because she never saw it. So we want to teach our young people how to, first of all, own their own thinking. Own your own thinking. You can't own what people keep telling you this or you got to own your own thinking, which means you have to course correct when you see it. Like if you keep saying, well, I'm just from the block, so I'm staying on the block. Let's change your thinking first. You own that. No one else owns that. You own your thinking about that. And the moment you see yourself outside of that, now we can take steps forward. Now we got progress. So the power of choice really does come to, and I think it sometimes has to become I want to say group effort, but I think it's more deeper than that, but for lack of better terms right now, it has to be a group effort because then you have to look at the circle of people and how they're thinking around you too. Because if the circle around you has a no choice thought process, then what? You're going to gravitate to that.
Before we take a break, and in the second half of the podcast today, I really want to talk to you about mentoring and why you do that and some of the keys to that. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of education? I mean, you finished your degrees and you do a lot of mentoring. And can you talk about the importance of education and the shift in the landscape of education now? And what is it that you are encouraging young people to do?
Wow. Education for me, and I tell young people this, you just want to give yourself an opportunity to pick and choose the lane you want to have. When you have, quote unquote, in high school in particular, you do well, you can come out of high school, you should be able to pick the lane you want to go down. If you decide, I want to go to college, you should have that option because of your high school career. If you say, I want to get into entrepreneurship, you should have that option because of your high school career. You have to take advantage of that because if you get to graduation day, you got a 1.8, it limits your options. We want young people to understand, why not put everything in front of you? And then you get to say, any, mini, mighty, mo, right? Like you get to go down the road and say, you know what, I'm gonna try entrepreneurship first. And if not, I can always come back to college because I already got the grades. Exactly. So for me, that's the mindset I give young people. I understand college isn't for everybody. I know that we talk about this all the time and absolutely 100% right. It's not for everybody. but you should have the option to pick and choose yourself. People shouldn't be telling kids, well, college just ain't. No, let him pick and choose if that's what he wants to do.
Right.
Or her. And those are the things that I think are very important and not talked about that way. I think we almost either got to go, well, you should be doing trades, or you should do 4-year, or you pause. Let's put the option in front of them. Make sure young people are educated enough that when they're done with high school, they can then open the door that they so choose. Mm-hmm. So the landscape of education now, because there's so many, oh my gosh, so many things that influence, like we have to use the encyclopedia. They just turn on the internet, right? Like we didn't know necessarily what was going on in Russia unless we happened to turn on Channel 4 News at that time, or our parents mentioned, oh, this is going on. They're tearing a wall down in Germany. Really, the news will show us. Now, every second of their day, it comes into a device, whether their phone, their computers, their tablets. So the landscape of education now does allow our young people in particular, to see a broader, I guess, scope of things. But again, going back to that choice thinking, if I'm not controlling my own thinking and I turn on the internet and I see all of this stuff, then I may not be able to pick and choose wisely. So the teachers, I think, own more of control over minds when they just really pause and try to, again, work with our students individually, which I think we've gotten away from as well, too. So
I agree. I think that our young people are just bombarded with information, and they lack the wisdom to discern how to interpret and process that information. Absolutely. And that's where those teachers and that one-on-one help will come. I agree with you. I think I say this too, that college is not for everyone, but education is for everyone.
Yes.
And just if we understand that becomes really, really important, that there is value in education, and however you get that within the confines of the established system, you'll be better off for it. This would be a great place for us to take a quick break. And when we come back on the other side, we're going to be talking with our guest, LaNelle Ramey, about mentorship, why that's important, and how you can be a mentor for someone else. We'll be right back on Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, after this break.
We hope you're enjoying Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Paralysis to Purpose for more updates. Also, check out David's website at davidcookspeaks.com to learn more about his mission and purchase his book, Getting Undressed, From Paralysis to Purpose.
I'm excited to continue our conversation with LaNelle Ramey. He is the executive director, make sure I get that right, of Mentor, all cap letters, Greater Milwaukee. And they are powered by the world champion, Milwaukee Bucks. So I want to shift gears here a little bit and talk about mentoring. You've been doing this for years and years and years. Why do you do this?
Simply put, we don't get nowhere without support from someone else. And a lot of times, I tell people all the time, we need sometimes confirmation to what our parents say to help us get over the hump. And then, like I said, I'm blessed to I have 2 fabulous parents, 3 really fabulous parents. But my mentors in my life were the ones who gave confirmation sometimes. When I was being the knucklehead that didn't want to follow the rules, right? It was the mentor. But I really feel like mentorship is really about supporting and being the guide on the side for young people. We grew up in an era, and you might remember this, Coach Cook, where kids were seen and not heard, yes. Right? And therefore, when young people are dealing with so much in their life, they don't get ways to express that. Mentorship allows a young person to have an adult who allows them to express that, share that, be open enough to say, dude, I'm struggling with this. And we talked about the internet and all this stuff that our young people get fed constantly. They need support and an adult in their life that allows them to be like, I'm struggling, or I feel good about this, or I want to do this. And that's what that mentor does. And I learned that informally by becoming a mentor when I first got into the field. Oh man, back in 1995, I think, 94. Like that's when I got into the field of youth development and informally became mentors. And I'm like, wow, this is what you can do with a young person. Because you can see lives change. And that's why it's so important to me.
What would you say? There are people out there that, don't think they could be a mentor. I don't have, it's too hard, or maybe my life experience hasn't been bad, or it hasn't been, traumatic. I have no big story to tell them. What do you tell people who say that and don't think that they can be of any value to young people?
I got two parts to that. First of all, mentorship is for everybody, right? Young person, whether that young person is a 4.0 headed to Harvard, or he a 0.2 and he's trying to figure it out. Every child needs a mentor in their life. So therefore, we tell people there's three things you got to understand about being a mentor. One, you got to be open and vulnerable, right? Open and vulnerability just simply means you're coming in with this mindset of saying, hey, listen, I hear you. I understand. That's just you sharing. The second thing is you share your story, whatever that story is you have. It's not about matching some superhero, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Giannis story that quote unquote just has this great little story. No, your story is your story. And then finally, a commitment to cultural competency. Understanding how we come from different cultures, not just race. I'm talking about if you went to a suburban school, I went to Riverside, we're going to think about school differently, period. That's a different culture, right? So understanding those three key elements makes you become a better mentor. You don't invent stories to impress a kid, because kids are very transparent and they can read you like a book. So if you come in and just be like, hey man, that's where I'm from. That's what was so great about Mr. Wild. Mr. Wild didn't have no gangster story or nothing that made me. No, he was just a regular guy who cared and talked to me with an open mind and listened to me with an open mind. And so that's all it takes, is you just have that, again, open and vulnerable, willing to share your story, and a commitment to cultural competency, and understanding every young person needs a mentor. It's not just the quote unquote what we say is a bad kid. No, it's that kid that's on his way to college, 4.0. Yes, he seemed to got it right, but people don't understand him because he got a 4.0. He always studying, and he needs that same kind of love and attention too. So yes.
So it's universal in its application, the whole mentoring idea. I always say this too. I think everyone needs a coach in their life, a coach, yes, a therapist, a mentor, however you want to call it, to help us identify blind spots and help us to be able to navigate and see things. I want to talk about cultural competence for a minute, because some of the terminology that we use now can be, can push people back a little bit and throw them off and be intimidating. So I want to talk about cultural competence. What does that mean? And also talk a little bit about the language of mentoring now, or the language that of race relations, or whatever you want to call it, because there just seems to be, the more we talk, the more the divide seems to.
And that's what's scary, right? And I think it's because people, when I say working with young people, we have to see the differences. You have to know them, right? So when we're talking about cultural competency, I tell people the story all the time. If I'm mentoring a young man, let's say he's growing up on 32nd and North. That's not the same 32nd and North I grew up on, right? That's a culture. And understanding that even something simple like that, now when you add race into it, and then when you add all the quote unquote discussion around race into it, we have kind of these different levels and layers that then people say, well, I can't help him because I'm white and he's black. No, because again, if you're truly there for me, you're just helping me by being a guide on the side. But it doesn't, allow me to understand that you're there to do that, because there's things in my life you may never understand. Some people may never understand what it means to live in a 2-bedroom with 8 people. Right. Open a refrigerator and there's only cheese, government cheese at that, right? And that's it. So you may not understand that, but that's okay. But you're willing to listen to that. You're willing to hear that. You don't have to say, I understand. One of my favorite quotes my therapist ever gave me was, you can't understand everybody. Why are you trying to understand? It's not for you to understand what your wife is going through. Your job is to listen to what she's going through. That's what mentors do. Listen, and then figure out how to be the resources to support. That's all. Now, the other thing I tell mentors is this, and with cultural competency, sometimes we got different values based on our upbringings or certain way we talk, or that doesn't change. Like, so as a mentor, my job isn't to say, all right, David, this is how we're supposed to do it. And you're like, hey, how we do it from where I'm from. So we got to pause and say, cultural difference. David, how do you all do it? How do you all handle this? I'm asking that because this is how we handle it. And I just want to make sure we're on the same page. So we have to have conversations in order to meet in the middle. And more importantly, I tell adults all the time, it's the responsibility of the adult who's the mentor, not the kid, to figure you out. The adults need to understand and learn the personality of our young people. And then you become, because our young people aren't monolithic. Just because I'm a Black man and I might be 6'6", don't mean I know how to play basketball. Mm-hmm. So if every time you see that and you say that, then I gotta like pause that, think, okay, culturally speaking, I'm sorry, tall Black guy, I thought you could hoop, right? Like, no, like we have to learn to take a step back, empty our minds sometimes of our thinking, our values, our ways, our beliefs. Look at the young person and say, talk to me, give me some words, what you about? And sometimes that may take some time because they don't know all the time. That group think is, sometimes the group think is, they're thinking like the group tells them to think. We got to help them learn how to be independent. I like to tell people all the time, the Kia boys. Them young boys ain't nothing but probably engineers, doctors, their intelligence level. But here's the thing, they had a group think mentality that got them social media love, that they ran, they got attention they weren't getting from somewhere else. That's it. You know, when you think about all that, like, so mentorship changes that. One of my best friends, one of my brothers, Quavada Antoine Nix, always used to say, he's like, LaNelle, there's mentors on every corner. Every corner in the hood, there's a mentor right now. They ain't no good mentor, but they trying to mentor these young brothers. So we got to do this for real. And I got to thinking about that. I was like, you're right. And I hate that we can call them a mentor, but that's the truth. There's some people that steering our young people down a path of group thinking, no choice thinking, can't come out of the poverty thinking, because guess what? They're controlling their thinking. Positive mentors can switch that by, again, allowing a young person to see who they are as an individual, help build them up as an individual, show them that they're destined to be something different, like getting that confirmation I got from Mr. Wild that my parents had already put in me. But it was him dropping an application in front of me that made me feel like, oh, somebody else think I'm dope, huh? Somebody actually think I can do this? Okay, let's go do it then. That's what we got to do as mentors. That's the journey. That's the chore. And we're too scared of our kids. It's okay to be at Walmart when a young person is behind the cash register. They look like they're not happy. It's okay as an adult to be like, how you doing today, son? How you doing today, sister? How you doing today, young person? And say that, hey, are you in school? Like, hey, it's tough summer, ain't it? Like, it's okay to have those conversations and show them we care. We call that having a mentoring mindset. Even though it's not the relationship, it's a mindset that shows a young person, oh, some adults out here that will talk to me like I got sense, right? Versus treating them like, stay in a young kid's place, be quiet, all of that. Those are things and elements that we try to tell with mentoring. And that's why we advocate so hard for mentorship, because everyone can do it. You know, not every relationship works. Let's be coach, coach, I'm gonna be clear, right? Like you might get you a mentee and it may not work, but you do your best as the adult, right? To plant this. And that's all that counts. So
whoever gave you that advice about you're not going to understand that's great advice. Because I think our society, in its effort to get us to get to the next level of loving one another, thinks that we have to understand everything about everyone. And we will never, if we're waiting to get to that point, then we'll never see the change that we really are all looking for. I'm going to take mentoring another step.
Okay.
I think mentoring is a lifestyle.
I agree.
You talked about the mindset, but I took it to a lifestyle when you were at Walmart or at the grocery store or whatever, and you just stopped and hey, how's everything? Are you in school? How you doing? How's your family? It becomes part of giving. I say Thanksgiving is a lifestyle. You don't just, either you're thankful or you're not. Such that mentoring doesn't have to be structured in a classroom.
No, not at all.
It can be anywhere, because when you said that about there are mentors on every street corner, I mean, that's a real revelation. And there are mentors on social media, and there are mentors all over the place. And we're trying to really change a generation and change the narrative that they are hearing.
You hit on a point, and then I'll say this real quick. One of the things that we do training with is our goal is that young people have a mentor in every aspect of their life. So when they go to work, there's somebody there, their supervisor is not going to just be like, hey, flip that burger, get them fried. They're going to be like, man, how was your day today? While we're doing the burgers together. Mm-hmm. Yo, I noticed you came in a little down. There's something going on I can help you with. And then when they leave, then they go to the community, whether it's a community center, whether it's the church, whoever, somebody's waiting there to be like, man, how was your day today? I saw you come in, anything I can help you with? And then when they go to school, teachers not just talking about, okay, open your books. We're going to go to chapter 1. They be like, hey, how was y'all day today? Like, it becomes an effort that everywhere they go, they find an adult who cares more about the now, the situation. I'm not saying on the job that they forget about the job, but I'm saying on the job, they find a relationship with someone that helps them grow and develop.
Yeah. The importance of understanding the temporary. You mentioned that before. And I want to come back to that, because I really do think, we both talked offline a little bit. We both had some health challenges recently, and we have to, we deal with it, but we don't stay there.
This is why, for me, mentorship becomes so valuable. And when I say mentorship, I mean, yes, someone, I call it your peer circle. You got a peer group that can do something, but then you also have kind of like the person you can go to. When you're going through that, you got to be able to have someone that can give you the energy back that you need. Because sometimes I feel like when we're going through to your point, we were talking earlier, last year I was sick. I suffered from an autoimmune that just took a drastic, toll. And I couldn't walk more than 10 feet, 5 feet. Going upstairs was almost impossible in some cases. I couldn't even open my mouth to talk at one point in time. Literally, I had to kind of just mumble. And I remember at one point in time, I got to thinking like, and my job is talking. You know me, coach, I got to run my mouth, right? Like, this is what I do, right? And so I got to a point of depression where it was like, what happens if you can't do what you love no more? But what I found was I had created a circle of people who knew me and understood me. And so without me having to say what was needed, they were able to pour into. Now, when your circle is tainted, or if your circle is not allowing you to be an individual, they're going to pour into you what they think you need to have from them versus what they know you as an individual need. And therefore, when you go through these struggles, that's why you got to make sure your circle, your peer group, y'all mentoring one another. So your circle has to be intact enough when you're doing it. They know how to handle you in your worst of time, and they know how to push you through these situations. And I had to relearn kind of the walking and the talking, but that, like, literally I was down and out for almost like 90 days. But then I didn't even want to go out the house because here, LaNelle, the social butterfly, can't shake hands, I told my wife, I said, no, we gotta go do something, like, because I need to feel myself. And then, like I said, so my circle, like, hey, I'll meet you there. That's all right. You need to get out. Let's get some air. So they understood what was needed. Like, no, you're gonna be okay. Don't worry about it. Like, this is why you're gonna be okay. They poured back into me. So young people haven't lived the experiences, quote unquote, to build that type of equity in themselves. So therefore their circle, their mentors help to do that. So when their tank gets empty, like I always say our young Black boys, because, that's been a part of my space for so many years. Mm-hmm. Like, they have the perseverance, like the things they deal with, and they seem to keep marching on. But then their emotional gauge is always low. Because again, who's pouring back into that, right? How do we teach mentors to pour into the emotional? Not this, hey man, pull yourself up, man, because when I was on the block, we did this and look where I'm at. No, because the block ain't the same from 1980 to 2022. Here's a whole new block, right? So understanding their emotional gas tanks are empty, pouring into that, pouring into, It's all right to cry, bro. I saw you struggling. You good. I got the shoulder right here. I cry with you, really. Like, we got to be confident enough to be there too for our young men and young women too. I don't want to leave them out, but that's where I think the pushing through part comes. The circle you have, right? Because they need to know who you are. And when they know who you are, they know what's needed to be replenished without you saying it. Now, sometimes you're going to have to verbalize it. I have to tell my wife, like, no, let me do it myself. Even though I couldn't walk, I'm like, I got it. She's like, I know you need to feel you can take care of yourself. So I'll be behind you. I got you. But that's what helps, I think, when you're going through the most. You can look in that circle. Even though there's some moments where you feel alone, you feel real. And it's dark, especially when you're sick like that, right? Like when you're in a hospital bed for 5-6 days and they pumping IVs and masks and talking about tubes down your throat, like you're like, wait, now pause. Like, it's dark moments. But when your circle knows what you need, they push you through it. So
you said a couple of things, and that whole idea of those dark moments, and I, up until a couple of years ago, I haven't had to live a lot of those. My life was a challenge in and of itself because of the wheelchair, but I had never really gotten sick or anything. And so I didn't know what it really meant to be alone. I didn't really know what it meant to feel lonely, and to feel that sense of, it wasn't that sense of depression, like, is this really going to end? You know it is, because you believe it, but you're dealing with that. And you said something that I think transcends age, but is key to all real relationships. And that is, you've got to be in relationships that give the energy back to you that you give out.
So important.
Man, that is so important, because otherwise you get drained. Yeah. And one of the things that mentors can struggle with is, after a while you get drained because you're really passionate, you're giving. It's a real mental engagement, and you need to have your tank filled again too. And so
we talk to our mentors about that, right? And you bring up a great point, because I think adults who pour into, adults who are trying to be that guy on the side, it takes a young person some time sometimes to realize the tools you're trying to give them. Yeah. So we're constantly taking out this toolbox. We're like, yeah, use this wrench, boy. Use this hammer. And they're like, I don't need that. I got this. And you're like, oh my God. Like, and then we got to stay the course though. We stay committed to it, because that's the energy that we need to show our mentee. We want them to have down the road, like, I'm still going to be here for you. I got the patience. I'm with you. So,
yeah. Well, look, we're gonna wrap it up shortly here. Before we do, we always ask each of our guests what comes to mind when they hear these three words. And for those who are new to Paralysis to Purpose, and our regular listeners, that we always talk about the importance of perspective, partnerships, and perseverance, and helping people go from a place of paralysis, which is anything that can keep you from fully functioning, to finding and fulfilling your purpose. And we believe everyone's purpose involves serving others. So these are things that we talk about. So you've shared a lot of these principles in what you've already said today, LaNelle. But I'm going to go back and just say it like I always do. What does the word perspective mean to you?
For me, perspective really means looking at a positive take in your next step. Whether perspective is, I want to do a new job. Okay, positively, like, what does that look like, right? Like, do I want to change roles? Do I want to work here? Do I want to do this? Like, to me, it positive has to be in perspective. If you make it negative, then it's going to be negative.
So that's such a great point. And I think you may be one of the first people who said something about, when you think perspective, you're looking at the positive aspect of the goal or the next step, and that that becomes important. Why is that important as part of your perspective?
Because it doesn't limit kind of the outcome for you. Like if your perspective is like, I can't do this, then when you go into it, it's going to be a negative outcome out the gate, because the struggle is going to even be more. So even if you accomplish it, the struggle to do it, because you was already negative about it, it's going to hold you back. But if you try to take it perspective and say the positive side of like, okay, now I don't care. Like I said, being sick, the positive perspective I started to form was I had a chance to sit down and meditate and pray every day now. Like that was I had to say, okay, you can't move. Pray harder now. Like talk to God. Like that was a positive for me. So.
Wow. That is a fantastic example where you took that situation and you flipped it so you could see it differently.
Yes.
Because how you see a thing will determine how you approach it.
There
And
you
so
go.
you had to find value in the midst of your darkness. You had to find value while you were sick and not capable of doing some other things. And you found that value and lived off that value. Perseverance. And I know you know about that.
Listen, perseverance is like you got to keep running, keep moving. Like I try to simplify, because when you're going through, whether it's good or bad, it's not. Your now is going to change. Perseverance means you got to keep moving. Like even in my good moments, like people say, LaNelle, you're doing some great stuff, and I'd be like, thank you, but like I'm trying. Like I still got stuff to do. Like there's still work to do. Like that yesterday was yesterday, and perseverance is just that. Like when I had my first son and Markel was born, Lord have mercy, Jesus, to this day, Lord knows I didn't know what I was gonna do, but I realized like it's not gonna be this way forever. Like he gonna be okay, we're gonna be okay. Let's keep pushing. And that's to me perseverance. Keep moving, move through it. When it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it ain't gonna be bad forever, right? Keep moving, and you're gonna be all right, and it's gonna work out.
So you connected you connected perspective to perseverance, and how your perspective will impact your perseverance. That is fantastic. Lastly, and you've touched about this all throughout the podcast today, and that is the importance of partnerships. Mentoring is partnerships. That's what this really is. But I know that there are always people assigned to you on your journey that are there to partner with you to help you get to the next step. So go ahead and talk about partnerships and what that means to you.
Well, and that's the best way to put it. Like you can't accomplish anything on your own in this world. On that, you need to be attached in multiple ways. And we tell people all the time, like, you can't be a know-it-all. You gotta have, you gotta be able to reach out to somebody and say, like, I can't do car brakes. My brother-in-law can do car brakes. Brother, come on, I need your help, man. Like, I got you. He can't play golf. I play golf. Let me help you with your swing. Those partnerships in life are no different than when you go to Starbucks and that partnership you create when you walk in there and you tell them, give me 3 extra pumps. You need to be able to, exchange relationship-wise, the ability to connect. When you think about life and its journey, you make partnerships along the way. Your teachers, when you go to work, your supervisor, the CEO, funders, when you're an entrepreneur, like, and even marriages, right? Like, your wife understands who you are. You understand who they are. And you give 100%. They give 100%. I don't believe 50-50.
Right.
Every partnership is 100-100. Like, I'm putting my all into this partnership. And that's how you then sustain and take this journey on life, not alone. Like, you don't walk this life alone. And that those partnerships help you navigate these things that you do. So.
Absolutely. I'm going to give you the last say. You've got 30 or 45 seconds and you want to instill some confidence in whoever's listening, some young person. Before you do that, one of the things that I have watched you do from a distance and up close is you have a very diverse circle of people of all shades, religious beliefs, everything. And you also have been successful at understanding that everybody doesn't hate you because you're a Black man. Can you talk about how you got there? And then I'll probably interrupt you again and say, give our people a parting shot. But I wanted you to talk about that mindset where you've given a lot of people from Mr. Tom at your high school to others, you've given them a chance to be a part of your life, and you've taken some risks to be a part of some other people's lives.
Absolutely.
Just talk about that for a minute, because I think that's very important.
Well, I think we got to, look at the goodness of people individually, right? Mr. Wild, again, he showed and was transparent in who he was. He didn't try to create a mythical teacher. He was who he was, which taught me early on, when people come authentic, that's accepting. You have to be authentic. Now, he also understood me. He knew my parents. He knew where I was from. He knew what I liked. Like, he knew my circle. So he understood me, and he understood my culture. That's why I say with cultural competency, a commitment in mentoring is me as an individual, whether you're a person of color or not, understanding who we are and how we're different and not running from that. Like, you can't run from the differences. I don't run from the differences. We accept it. But then that doesn't have to be our only conversation, our differences. We talk about what's common. We talk about, our common path we're going on, whatever that looks like. And that's what's important. When you can do that, then people can be more authentic, I think. And then we're that partnership. It more serving, so to speak, on both sides. And I think when individuals think about being a mentor and say they're white and they're thinking about mentoring a person of color, like, as long as you acknowledge they are a person of color, as long as you can acknowledge that they come from a different background and you're coming authentic and willing to be open and vulnerable with a commitment to cultural competency, go down the road, be that mentor. Things you're going to learn from your mentee, they're going to learn from you. That's how we create this synergy that we want to see, right? And I think that's what can happen. People have to be authentic. But then we as adults, when you think about working with a young person in particular, have to allow the threshold of that young person to learn and be who they are as well, without holding them accountable to what I just see and only what I see. Like I said, kid growing up on 32nd and North, I can act like my time was quote unquote different than or better or worse than his. I don't even know what it's like to live on 32nd and North no more. It's 2022. That was 1977 for me, right? Like, it's a different era, right? Like, so understanding that and having that commitment is, I think, great.
And if you had one parting shot of hope that you wanted to give to our listeners, what would that be?
One, don't try to walk this and take this journey in life by yourself. There's just no need for that. Like, there's enough pressure for us as people to do things, and everybody got their own thing. That surround yourself with those positive people. Make sure your circle is pouring into you as much as you're pouring out, because I think that's where you find your strength, when you know you have someone to lean on when you need them the most. And I think that's what mentoring does. When a young person is going through this journey in life, we remember the days in high school where prom was stressful for us, right? Like, we was like, but didn't nobody want to listen to us. Ain't no adult like, man, stop, listen, it's just prom. Like, no, you don't understand. As our young people navigate this thing called life, we need to make sure that they're surrounded by adults who are just there looking like, I got your back. You good. Don't worry about it. I'm here for you. And like, that's where we start to make, I think, a transformation in a way we as people interact. When we can see each other in a way that says, no, I got you. I got you. Let's move forward. Because my mentees changed my life as much as I changed theirs. They've made a positive impact on me as much as I feel like I may have made a positive impact on them. So and if anybody wants to be a mentor, go to MilwaukeeMentor.com. You can learn more about what we do. We can partner with you in any form or fashion to make sure we're making a better difference for our young people. So,
well, LaNelle, you already beat me to it. I was going to ask you, how do people get a hold of you and all that? You did that already. If people in other parts of the country are looking for an expert in this area, our guest today is that expert, and I know that he'd be willing to help you and help you establish mentoring programs. And you know what? No beginning is too small. And I want to make that really clear. And the impact that you have is not too small. If it's just one person, that's huge. And that goes a long way. So don't underestimate what you can do. LaNelle, this has been great. I am so glad we were able to sit down and do this. I'm sure our paths will continue to cross here in Milwaukee and beyond. So this is David Cooks. Until next time on Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, that your ability to endure is always greater than your willingness to endure.
You can do anything you put your mind to.
Thanks for tuning in to Paralysis to Purpose. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paralysis to Purpose on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. To purchase his book, visit davidcookspeaks.com. Be sure to tune in next time for more inspiring conversations with David Cooks.
The process that we go through, the sacrifices that we make, they're all custom designed. They don't feel good. I think that we probably get angry at God, angry at ourselves as we go along. But in the end, what you realize is it's not the destination. The destination is always sure.
Next time on Paralysis to Purpose.
Rosalind Weems, I want to welcome you.
If you stay the course, it is the journey that is critical, because the journey is what makes you and what drives your character so that you can be effective at reaching other people that you will meet along the journey.
Paralysis to purpose.